right, welcome back. Nkiru Nwoked is joining me right now from the United States. Hello, Nkiru, and welcome to the show.
Nancy, hello.
Good morning. Are you still feeling sleepy? I
Good
know it's still.
morning.
I know it's still very early. You
You
should.
know you woke me up. So
Yes, fantastic. You know, you just got to do that reporter's duties. Don't worry, I wouldn't hold you for so long. Now, let's talk about the IMF and World Bank meetings. They are done and dusted, isn't it, for the past few days?
yeah.
Yeah, speak to me about what's been happening, at least what happened in the last few days.
All right, Nancy. You know the meeting started with they started with the press briefing on the world economy. Now the IMF research chief that briefed journalists gave us the numbers. According to him, he said the world economic outlook that global economic growth will slow to about 3.2% in 2022 and 2.7% in 2023, the weakest growth profile since 2021, since 2001. So now what are the major forces that are affecting growth? They talk about the Russia-Ukraine crisis, the cost of living, especially the rising inflation in most of the countries across the globe, and also the slowdown in China economy. All this, they say, will affect the economy in 2023, and they will go beyond 2024. They will go beyond to 2024. What are they saying? What should policymakers do at this time? For them, the monetary authority cannot do it alone. The fiscal authority must come in to support the monetary authority. Now, let's look at Africa. Africa growth will also decline to about 3.6%, and Nigeria growth also is dropping by about 3.2% in 2022, and in 2023 will drop to 3%. So for them, the worst is yet to come in 2022 and 2023.
Yes, Nkiru, I noticed because I was following the meeting all through last week. You recall that I was even chatting you all the way from the US. I was here. I even knew the color of the clothes you were wearing because I was following you guys closely. I was monitoring that meeting bumper to bumper. But what's very interesting also is that the World Bank, these international institutions have lowered Nigeria's economic forecast. Why did you think that our growth forecast dropped? What did they base these assumptions on?
The assumptions are based on one, on the inflation rate. Secondly, the high energy costs. For them, we should not spend much on subsidy. All the money we spent on subsidy should be channeled to other productive sectors of the economy. Then again, they talk about the tax. They say we are not generating enough. So if we are not generating enough and we are spending the little we have on subsidy, it's not a good deal for Nigeria. And we should work on that. And again, they talked about the issue of debt. They said global economy will experience debt distress. So for Nigeria, how prepared are we if the global economy will experience debt distress? And again, there's another warning that we might experience global recession. So if we are experiencing a recession, is Nigeria really prepared for this recession? Those are the questions that we are asking. So if Nigeria is not prepared for this hard time that is coming, what will really happen to our country?
Now, the question is, when they said that Nigeria should mobilize more taxes, do these multilateral institutions, are they by any means suggesting that tax rates should be hiked? Should we raise tax rates, or should the tax net be deepened? What was their suggestion?
Though they didn't really mention, they didn't really talk about raising the tax rate. They just said we need at least to generate more. Even the little we are getting, we should utilize it very well. We should not spend the little we are getting on subsidy. We should spend the little we are getting on other sector, at least to help improve the life of many Nigerians. That's what they are saying. So they didn't really mention that we should increase our tax rate, but they want us to increase the tax to GDP. How we have to do it now depends on the government. Do they have to widen their tax net? It is for them. But I believe what we need to do now is to widen our tax net, but not overburden those that are already paying the tax. We can generate more tax. We can tax the rich the more, but not taxing the poor so much. The little we get, the poor can really benefit from this. So that is, for me, that's my own feeling.
Okay, let's talk about the debts which you mentioned earlier. Are there any talks? I don't know if you've gotten any hints, perhaps from the finance ministers, and as regards Nigeria's debt. Are there talks around perhaps restructuring our debt? Because according to the president last week when he presented the budget, Nigeria's debt is at 42 trillion naira, excluding the CBN's ways and means, excluding CBN's borrowings to the federal government. That is around 22 trillion naira now. So if you add that together, about 64 trillion naira, excluding the deficit for next year. So our debt would just be ballooning. Are there any talks around restructuring? Are you getting any hint from the finance minister?
This restructuring was a controversial issue that came up this meeting. For the minister, according to her, she said she's not restructuring. I don't know. She said she wants to find a way of reducing the debt. If you want to find a way of reducing the debt, how are you going to do it? Though we expected her to brief us yesterday to tell us how, but the minister didn't brief the journalists yesterday. So we are there, we are just looking at what they want to do, how they want to restructure these debts. For them, they said they don't want to restructure. Because we asked the World Bank president, he told us that, well, Nigeria has not started the process at all. Even if they want them to restructure, they've not started the process. So until they start, that they are ready to help Nigeria. But you cannot help somebody that did not seek for help. So until the person comes to you to say, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, that's only when you can help the person. But if the person don't come, you will still be watching the person until the person is ready.
Okay.
So for now, they don't have any, Nigeria has not applied for anything, and they are waiting to see. If they want, fine. If they don't want, they can find other ways of restructuring their debt.
Okay, lastly, Nkiru, let's talk about the press briefing which you mentioned earlier. In fact, for us, the press briefing at the end of the meetings is normally a highlight. At least for the past many years, at least we cover these meetings on a regular basis. It's normally done on Sundays, where we have the central bank governor and the minister of finance brief Nigerian journalists. Is this the first time this briefing did not hold? And why did it not hold? Because I'm aware that the CBN wanted to hold the briefing, but the minister of finance did not yield. So what exactly, and this is the first time, isn't it? Because that's normally a highlight. All of us, in fact, all the years I've been covering, on Sunday we will know that they will brief us and we'll ask all the questions we're supposed to ask.
Yes, since I've been covering the IMF meeting, I know on Sunday, even all of us, all the journalists in Nigeria waited till Sunday to know if the minister will brief. But we just got a message that they don't think the briefing will hold anymore. Well, they didn't really give us any concrete reason. They just said, minister is the head of delegation. So if she don't want it, she don't want it. CBN cannot do otherwise. So we waited around the press center. Since it was not forthcoming, we have to leave. So no reason. They just said the minister is not coming. So you all have to leave that place. Okay. And this is the first time. I know all the while I've been covering the meeting, Sunday, the minister will always give us a breakdown of what really happened. But this time around, we are just left on our own and we don't have any option than to go.
Anyway, it's such a sorry situation, I must say, because so why going to the United States in the first place? And there's that culture, and it didn't just even start with her. Kemi Adeosun upheld even that, that culture when she was the finance minister. In fact, even Dr. Nkozi Okonjo-Iweala used to also brief the press on Sunday. Yes, we've been doing this for years, if not decades. So I really don't know why the Minister of Finance did not want to speak to journalists at this time. Is it because Nigeria is in a very precarious situation now, and she doesn't want to be like quoted out of context, or doesn't want to answer to the hard questions which I know that the journalists will be posing to her. But anyway, I hope it is not a culture that has come to stay. Let's see that we excuse her at this time. But when she comes back to Nigeria, she would definitely get to answer those questions. If she doesn't answer it, the headlines will make her answer it by force. Anyway, thank you very much, Nkiru, for joining me today, and have a safe trip back.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
All right. That's Nkiru Nwoke, the AIT correspondent, giving us a review of what's happened in the last few days at the IMF World Bank annual meetings. It's a tradition. The IMF and the World Bank holds meetings twice a year, the spring meeting and the annual meetings, where, they review and also give us a forecast about what's happening globally, Africa, and also Nigeria. Let's quickly take a break to get in our guest as we tackle the issue of all thefts in Nigeria. A very sticky one, embarrassing, shameful. We will be right back.
Here is a new and refreshing offer for our esteemed audience across the globe. The new AIT Cloud TV is an online streaming service that offers you attractive opportunities to view our rich, exciting, and entertaining programs anytime, anywhere. AIT Cloud TV is available on the web on www.ait.app, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Android TV. You can also download the mobile app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Simply connect to the internet, download the app, register, and watch live or catch up on unlimited hours of exciting shows. AIT Cloud TV. TV on the go.
All right, welcome back. Peter Esele, the former president of Pengasan, is joining me right now, as well as Tosi Gewu, is a senior economist at Impact Research at ProShare Nigeria. Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Good morning, Comrade Esele.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tosin, and welcome to the program. This issue is such a sticky issue for me, and I really don't know where to start. And it's really unlike me, because there are so many issues to take a look at in this topic we're discussing today around crude oil theft. But Peter Esele, let me start with you as the former president in Pengasan. Can you give me an idea about this narrative and this story, this tale? Perhaps it's not Tales by Moonlight, though, but this decades-old story of stolen crude oil in Nigeria. How easy is it to steal crude, really?
Thank you again for having me. I think this is something we've been discussing over the years. It's very difficult for you to steal crude. So for you to steal crude successfully and get away with it, there is a collusion between state actors and non-state actors. And the state actors that I'm talking about has to do with the various oil companies. You have the oil companies, you have the NNPC, and then you have the security agencies. For example, you don't have any vessel entering Nigerian waters without AIS picking it up. By AIS, I mean Automatic Identification System, which is under the control of the Nigerian Navy. So if you have that, and you also have the long-range identification system, which also, even if a ship is about 1,000 kilometers away, they are also able to pick it. So when you have all of that in place, and you keep on shouting that your crude is being stolen, first quarter of this year, Nigeria lost over $1 billion from crude oil theft. So it has been going on unabated because you have powerful people involved in it. powerful people from the security agencies. I had several questions that I had to ask. I said, first of all, the Tantina, that's the new the security surveillance company that just signed a contract with an NPC. They are barely less than 8 weeks old, and they've discovered 58 points. 58 points that where crude theft is being carried out. And if you look at all of these, you know that it's not possible for that to happen without having collusion from within. And NNPC also give them some credit. They've been able to start looking at themselves in the mirror. And all of this problem would have been solved with technology. It's becoming easier now for NNPC to stand up now because NNPC now also have a control room. When I use the word control room, where they're able to see the entire piping across the country. So with all of that, we also have satellite imagery, which NNPC now also uses to know any pipeline that is tampered with. So, but what Nigerians are looking out for, I'm not surprised at crude oil theft. No, that's not surprising to me. What I would be surprised about is the prosecution, if these guys are actually prosecuted. I'm not talking about the small fries, those that you see that are being shown on TV, the crew. No, those are small fries. I'm talking about the big players. How do you reach out to the big players? Because if you don't do that, you're not setting any precedents. And no investor comes into an environment where there's no law and order, where everybody gets away with whatever they do. So what we have not paid attention to is that the IOCs especially started divesting from the downstream. When I use the downstream, from the swamp, and they started going offshore. They were not talking too much, but the reason behind all of that was because they felt that their assets were not being protected. And people were getting away with all of this. Nancy, let me just give you an example. Somebody is stealing 400,000 barrels of crude a day. And that has been going on for about 9 years. Let's say in the past, maybe they were doing 10,000, 20,000. Because nobody was doing anything about it, they started going professionally. Now you can see how they moved the crude to a vessel offshore. Now, if you are doing that, let's average it out at $50. That's $20 million a day. Then you multiply that by 30 days, that's $600 million. Times 1 year, that's $7.2 billion. And if you have that in the hands of individuals, they become a threat to national security. They become a threat to the state. I also had questions around the vessel that were burnt. And I had to ask several questions from behind. Why do you have to do that? That's an evidence. But what I gathered from my own questioning is there is this feeling when a system is broken, nobody trusts the system, nobody believes in it. Our system is broken. And for you to deal with this, you must have a system in place, you must have a structure, and then you must have a process that you must respect. And when you have that process that you respect, and then you must follow through. When you burn a vessel, what signal are you sending out? First, you are burning an evidence. And I heard the Chief of Defense Staff saying that they're just sending out message to others who want to do similar things. And I think that is lack of critical thinking. If you have critical thinking, what you should do is that you have that vessel, you have to now also investigate the owners of those vessels. Where is it coming from? And above all, you've just destroyed further our environment. By setting that vessel on fire, our environmental degradation has also worsened. So what we are not factoring in is that process matter. And by process, the Chief of Defense Staff, for me, shouldn't have been there. That's the number one military officer we have in our country. The Department of State Security would have been there. There are various agencies that should come on ground and carry out an effective investigation so that Nigerians can believe in the process. Nigerians are happy, first of all, yes, we are seeing all of this come out, but you have to reassure Nigerians, reassure investors that yes, you can do business here because we're a country of law and order. And what they're looking at for is for you to prosecute those who are behind this.
Okay. Now let me bring in Tosi Ige here because Tosi and his team some weeks ago did launch a report called The Anatomy of Crude Oil Theft in Nigeria. And Tosi, good to have you again. My sciences, basic sciences tells me that anatomy means the composition, inner composition of a human being. Some people go to study that, anatomy, physiology, and all of that. This report that was just released some few weeks ago, with what is playing out now, what has been playing out in the last few days, what do you guys think at ProShare? Are you seeing it really unfold the way you have said it in that report? Because I've taken a look at the report. You have the big boys playground. Will you attribute that to what Peter Sele just said earlier, that it's a cartel, you know, who are those stealing the oil and all of that. So just give me a brief overview of the things that have been playing out in the last few days and what your report says.
Okay. Thank you for having me once again. Let me confirm that you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Thank you once again. Truly, we had anticipated what we are seeing now. In fact, as I said the other time, our report is quite detailed because we try to, in text and infographics, describe all of this process. And to add to what Mr. Peter said, really, the scale of OITF suggests that there are 5 things involved. While we can see the scale that we are seeing here, and I'll list them. The first one is the supporting infrastructure. Now, for you to actually steal this crude, you need the infrastructure. Like we're talking about the pipeline that these folks use or the ship they use. Those are the infrastructure that a common man cannot just have. And so you need that. Is because those thieves, they have that. That's why we can see all their operation in their skill. And in most instances, some of these infrastructures are not, they are not a small infrastructure, they are the big one. You see the size of the vessel that were born. So those infrastructure are in place. And another one, you need the political support. Now, as I said, truly, we can't have the scale of oil theft we're having in the country now without.
Okay, it's like Tosin has a bad network over there. Now, Peter, let me come back to you and talk about what you said earlier. And I really want us to dig deep into how this processes or how crude oil is being stolen. Because when I take a look at the whole process, Peter, are you still there?
Skill and the expertise is another thing that we see that I think earlier this morning there was a news out there that the odds and the code tapping points used by these folks are not they are big vessels. Hot tapping and cold tapping are not done with crude implements. They are done with sophisticated instruments. So that is also in place. Another one, they need the security. Now, the oil that was discovered over the weekend, it was said that a military checkpoint is just some kilometer away. So that again speaks to what we are talking about. And lastly, we need the supply chain partners. Now, it is because these folks ask people they are selling to. That's why we can see them continuing in this business. And with all of these 5 things, we think that is why the scale is growing and we had anticipated in our report.
Okay, Peter, let me bring you in here and let's talk about the structure by which this crude oil is being stolen. Of course, you've mentioned earlier, a lot of people will say it's a cartel, so to speak, just like even Proshare did put here that is the big boys playground. Well, the big boys, would they be, or would the role, what's the role of like government officials, the top business people, the industry personnel, the security personnel, even the host community itself? That's one. The other question also is around what kind of documentation is really needed to lift crude from this country, because I need us to take a look at it, searchlight it more than just, okay, you are just putting a pipeline, attaching an illegal pipeline to a legal pipeline, which we've seen those pictures on television lately. There's also the issue of corruption-induced oil theft that can also come through documentation. So I'd like you also to take a look at all of that.
Okay, let me give you an example. Is if you have a pipeline, somebody is tapping into the pipeline, that is illegal, and you have about 4.5 kilometer of pipeline that was tapped into a vessel that had just been discovered, and that vessel continually collect those crude. So what you have is that is illegal. There may be no documentation that will help you to get that out. Now, if you want to get a documentation for that, is that you have to get some people in the system to help you get a documentation for that. And for the proper channel to get a crude out of Nigeria, you have to have NNPC has to be there. The DPRO, which is now upstream, that has a change of name, the custom will be there, the military, the security personnel will be there. So you have a whole chain of government agencies. That's why we use the word state and non-state actors. So if you have that whole chain compromised, then that crude has to go. Let me share a story someone wants. Let me share a story with you. Somebody has to, the crude oil needed to leave the shore. And somebody has to be there to what they call physicalization, which means the person had to see it and to be sure that this is what is actually living, and the person will sign off on it. And the person got there and he said, "Can I see what is going on?" And they said, "No, just sign." And the guy said, "No, I'm not going to sign for something that I have not seen." Now the guy was asked to report back to base because he has not signed, and that's an official channel, and the crude cannot leave. So what they had to do was to send somebody else. When they sent somebody else, the person got there and signed off on it. But fortunately, in Lagos, when the document got to Lagos, they said, "Oh, Tosin was supposed to be the person to sign this. Why then is Peter's signature here?" And the report was that Tosin refused to sign. And then I said, "Oh, Tosin need to be queried. Tosin need to be queried for dereliction and not carrying out orders." Fortunately, Tosin was queried, and Tosin has to answer to that query and said he was not allowed to see the product. In the process, the product has already left the country. But Lagos was in the same spot with Tosin. Therefore, Lagos refused to honor that. So what they had to do was that they had to keep it under the wrap so that nobody knows about it. But Tosin had to go out of this country to go and physicalize it to make sure that that now becomes a part of what will come to Nigeria. So we have Nigerians who are also patriotic within the system. But the problem you have is that is why I talk about process, I talk about structure, because once you compromise the process, so many people, so many things will go wrong. If you take, for example, the analogy I just gave to you now, if the man at the top was part of that criminal act, Tosin would have been fired. But Tosin went on to live and work in that government agency until he retired. But since the man at the top was not part of the process, he was not able to defend Tosin and make sure that allocation came back into the federation revenue or the federation account. That is also another way whereby we have to ensure that we have people who are patriotic. And then you also look at the security aspect of it. The Navy, one of the issues why I've worked in that sector. So we are process driven. If a challenge of that magnitude comes, my MD will not be the first person to go. So that process is why I question why the chief of defense staff will be there himself. Yes, it's a very important thing, but what I will tell you is beneath the office of the chief of defense staff. What would have happened is that the process run itself, which is Department of State Security, that makes it a security, internal security. It now has to do its own report, which goes to the director of the DSS director, which now goes to National Security Council, where everybody now puts us together and says, this is where we have to go. But when you have a general of that rank being the first person to appear, what you have is that you chase away every other apparatus of the state, because in the security agencies, ranks are respected, not the law. So that is also another aspect that I think that we have breached. There are certain things that when you breached it, is either I ask myself, is it that you don't know, or is it a dereliction of duty, or is aiding and abetting corruption?
Okay.
You will see the difference now in Milik Kyari's tenure as the GMD of NNPC. When I told people earlier, I said he has done something that no GMD in NNPC have done. He was the first GMD to audit NNPC and let us know that NNPC is not making profit and what is happening all over NNPC. That people jump on him, but that for me was somebody looking into the mirror. Now, secondly, NNPC now have a technology to be able to look at the entire pipeline infrastructure across the country to tell us where each of these points that is being tampered with. And then you now also have the Tantina, which of course ex-militant or I don't know what I would call him now. But again, he too is also a player in that sector. So because he knows, that's also why it's also good for you to have what I call local knowledge. Because the Tantina knows about what is playing out, that security company knows about what is playing out. That is why it was so easy for them to come around and discover those points.
Okay,
So my only
comrade.
challenge, my only worry now going forward, when you talk about critical analysis of what is at play, is that what is our short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals?
Okay. I will come to you. I'll come to you, comrade. Let me come back to Tosin. In your report, you did itemize quick and dirty fixes. You also did talk about the long-term fixes. Can you take us through that in just like a minute, if you can?
Who are part of this cartel? You fish them out.
Tosin, if you can hear me, the question is for you.
Part of this cartel, you fish them out.
Tosin, if you can hear me, the question is for you.
Badly retire.
Oh, okay. We're getting a mix-up there. Tosi, can you hear me now? Okay. We're getting a mix-up there.
So be thinking of doing similar thing.
Okay, seems that comrade, I can see here comrade there. Comrade, if you can hear me, I'm moving over to Tosin right now. Comrade, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so let me come over to Tosi, and Tosi, please just run us through some of the quick and dirty fixes which your report did highlight earlier, and also the long-term fixes, because right now, I don't know, are we really at crossroads, or have we left crossroads since Tom Polo's security outfit has unraveled this in the last few days, and he did say that he knows who the oil thieves are. So what are the quick and dirty fixes, very quickly?
All right, thank you. And true, we have those quick and dirty fixes, and then we have the long-term fixes. Well, in terms of the quick one, the short-term one, I think one of our projection is what we actually see playing out now. We actually talked about geospatial surveillance, and we think NNPC is pursuing this in two instances. They are using the human efforts, which is the Tantita security service is talking about, and also they have this surveillance assessment center now, so they are also deploying technology. So we had actually looked at that this is something that will work, but yet our recent concern has actually been that yes, Tantita is actually providing the surveillance, but really he's not going to implement whatever he find out, or he's not going to punish those whom he will actually arrest, and that lies with the security operative. But we talked about the security operative being involved in this cartel, so it's a concern that we feel that actually we need to sanitize the military, because one of our dirty fix is also the military, that we actually need military personnel that are objective to tackle this thing. And I think to what Mr. Peter said, maybe that's why the chief of defense staff decided to take the bull by the horn himself, because across the chain, maybe there is nobody he could trust now, and so he decided to take it. So one of those quick fixes is actually we need the military, and another one is actually we need to incentivize the community to see and tell. And we could say that the NNPC has done something similar, given that they have this app that they've told people to report incidents to. And I think they put some incentive there. So we feel really this is one thing that we think also that we can be able to actually deal with this issue. But a major one, and as Mr. Peter has said, is actually the punishment, so that it can act as deterrent. See, if we do not punish people openly, and if we do not really give them those punishments, there won't be this deterrent. The Tompolo organization can keep identifying those things, but we will only keep going in circle if we do not punish. So that punishment, that implementation is a major aspect that we feel is actually needed at this time. So technology, human efforts, military, all of these things are what we feel that they are the quick and dirty fixes that we need at this time. But when we talk about the long term, we are looking actually at the industry as a whole. So there are that aspect where we say that we need that a refinery. We really need to make the country a refinery hub, whereby we don't have these long stretches of pipeline. The pipeline are short, and the processing unit, the refineries are close to some of this well. So we have those chain of refinery, and as such, we don't have this long stretch. So the pipeline are no longer susceptible to vandalism and theft. And another one, as a quick one, a major one that we actually recommend in our report is actually the maritime strategy, because as Mr. Peter said, yes, the Navy has been doing several things. In fact, they have their naval strategy. But what we feel is actually that the offshore aspect of our country really need a national maritime strategies. Let's look at it holistically. So not just what the military is doing, because the military can be playing in isolation, but that may not really be effective when we look at it from a broad perspective, having this the military, the Navy working to fulfill the objective of the maritime strategy, which of course the maritime strategy again will feed into the national strategy. So we are looking at developing the entire ocean that we have in the country. So we look at all those exploration, the health of the water, the defense, the coastal. We actually had a section in our report, details to that we need to look.
Okay, Tosin, I'm afraid we need to come back to Comrade Peter Esela, because we have about 2 minutes to end this program. And Comrade, in just a few seconds, if you can, I did mention earlier that Tom Polo did say that they know who the oil thieves are. And it's brought me back to the some years ago when the federal government said that they know who the sponsors of Boko Haram are. But they are not saying who those people are. At least the easiest way to even get someone is to target or attack the money source. You follow the money. That's where, even advanced countries, what they do. So what should we expect at this time, especially now that he says we know who the oil thieves are, there's a burning of a vessel, and you did mention earlier that technology is being used now. Of course, we have the automation identification system. The NNPC Limited also did launch what they call the crude oil theft application some time ago, when they signed all mining leases with their international partners. So with all of this, where should we go from here, and how serious should we take this? Or after some time now, we will see it die down. It's all in the media now. After like 2 weeks, everything dies down and everyone goes back to status quo.
One thing you have to take note of, in our society, what I've learned over the years is that we are very dramatic. Everything it becomes front page news after 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But again, that's the role of the media. This is one very important thing that the media, Nancy, you too also need to take this up and look back 6 months' time. Let's come back to this, because the media need to shine the light on it. In 6 months' time, to ask, what are you doing? Ask the minister, ask the GMD of NNPC, ask the military, what's the progress? Who have been prosecuted? Because what is happening in this oil theft is a metaphor for what is happening across the country. Yeah. Whether it's from Boko Haram, whether it's the Ministry of Finance, or whether it's the Accountant General's office, whereby you have 190 billion that was missing. Nobody knows who has been prosecuted. Nobody knows those behind it. Nobody knows those who collected part of the money. So until we decide that, okay, now, what if you do the crime, you have to do the time. That should be the number one. Whoever is responsible for doing the crime must do the time. Secondly, following the money, who are those buying this crude? The last one that was picked up, that supplies crude to Ghana. So which company in Ghana that is receiving it? Then what the federal government now do, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs now comes in. And then the Ministry of Finance will also now come in. And then they are able to calculate how much revenue have we lost. And then bring pressure to bear on the Ghanaian government so that we can also get that money back. Or also the Ghanaian government will go ahead and also prosecute those people. And then across the chain, we also look at the military. The military that is in charge of securing your maritime waters, your maritime security. How much is their salary? What are you paying them? What are the incentives? Some of them have to get a boot for themselves. Some of them allowances are not paid how many months they are in the forest. So what you've done now is that you've exposed them to corruption, because the first law of life is survival. So if you send somebody to go and look after a project for you and the guy is hungry, it's easy for the guy to be compromised.
Okay, comrade, I think we'll leave it at that now. Comrade, I think we'll leave it at that now if you can hear me, because we've got to go. We'll continue this conversation on another day. Of course, you've thrown a challenge to me, and we'll continue to watch this situation. It's really a very embarrassing situation and shameful that Nigeria has been overtaken as Africa's top oil producer by Angola and even Libya, because we're producing less than 1 million barrels a day. I remember just a few years ago, we're producing over 2 million barrels per day, and we are nothing to write home about right now. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on the show today. I've been speaking with Comrade Peter Esele, who is the former president of Penguson, and Tosi Ige, who is the senior economist impact research at ProShare Nigeria. I'll talk to you guys soon again. That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Thank you all for your company. Please join us again tomorrow on this edition, on another edition of the show, another guest, another topic. I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be and be that change that you want to see. Bye now.